Jai Hind viewers, we are back with another MRO Digest dialogue today. This time, our guest is someone whose credentials are a matter of envy for each one of us. So, let's welcome Major General Harsha Kakar, retired from Regiment of Artillery, whose contribution to national security calculus is unparalleled. I am confident that you would have read his articles, seen him, or heard him covering a vast range of subjects. And today, he has consented to speak to us on fast tracking the indigenous process in the defense forces. How to fast track the indigenization of the defense forces has been a worry of all the stakeholders. Certain actions have been taken by government and other stakeholders, but there are certain ground inputs which are critically needed to fill the gaps whatever are being filled by the manufacturing industry. Jai Hind, Jan Harsha sir, we
Jai Hind,
welcome you
Ashok.
on MRO Digest platform today. We are very keen to hear your original views for larger benefit of the nation. As you are well aware, sir, Government of India is concerned about indigenization of defense forces in a big way. How critical do you think it is to indigenize the defense forces at this juncture of time?
Multiple reasons. I mean, everyone talks about indigenization being more essential after the Russian-Ukraine war. When sanctions went on to Russia, then the supplies coming in from Ukraine were being impacted. But that's not true. Indigenization was required from a long time ago. Reasons are multiple. Apart from using vast amounts of foreign exchange, which can actually be used to develop within, you were not being permitted to develop your own technologies. And as long as you were importing, you were banking on someone else to provide you not only technology, but spare parts and a whole lot of maintenance services. So you were dependent on another nation which could exploit you geopolitically when they wanted. The second factor, any country which is providing you equipment has got you by the tail. It is not the equipment, it is the spare parts and the maintenance. The third factor, when you decide to buy from abroad, they dictate what is the maintenance requirements. It may not be in your country depending on the type of terrain, but it may not be suitable for India. So frankly, we should have begun this move of indigenization long ago. Rather than having begun it, we've begun it almost, I would say, 2 decades late. And by beginning it 2 decades late, we are now trying to rush to catch up. Now, this is something which is now in the process. And therefore, as long as you are dependent on indigenous equipment, it may be a generation behind. But the fact is, it gets modified as it is used, which you cannot do with imported equipment. Today, the world realizes that trials done in India are the most extensive on any equipment as compared to anywhere else in the world because of the extensiveness of the trials. If that is what we are doing to our equipment, which we are inducting, I think we can induct equipment, keep amending it, keep building it up generation by generation. But we should have begun this process long back. Now that we've begun it today, I think we are moving at a good pace, and I think we need to move faster.
Thank you very much, sir. In fact, you have already highlighted the criticality of indigenization on various counts. You have also rightly expressed the fact that we are now quite late in the process, and therefore currently the process needs to be expedited. Now, having said so, sir, though you have briefly touched the impact of Russia-Ukraine war, especially on our defense forces, where our bulk supplies from is Russia. Do you think that there is a more sense of urgency and criticality because of this ongoing war and the lessons which are being thrown up in the equipment domain?
Absolutely. You see, once the war began, the requirement of supplies for the Russian equipment would go to Russian equipment which is being employed in the war. It is not going to be coming to India to make up its shortages. Secondly, the naval engines which were being imported from Ukraine, their industries were hit. So, with the bargain, we began losing out from there. So, we had to immediately go in to look for options. Now, this is something which is not going to end. Even if the war concludes, which it will sometime this year, but even if it does end, ultimately the stocking of their equipment, the rebuilding of the factories is going to take time. But this is a lesson today that anything can happen anywhere. And when a nation which is supplying India with weaponry gets involved in its own conflict, its interest is its own conflict. So it's a lesson for the future. Anywhere there is a problem, you can be rest assured if you're dependent on that country, you're going to lose out. So it's only when you indigenize, you produce, the priority of the production on your soil is with you, and nobody can stop it.
Thank you, sir. In fact, my next query is related to these first two responses. Now, government has been taking multiple actions for indigenization. They have come out with four positive list of indigenization. They have created Defense Innovation Organization and Ministry of Defense. The process of vendor registration and the data has become transparent in number of areas. Technology develop fund support, which was limited to 10 crore, has been pegged up to 50 crores. And at IDEX, challenges are also taking place, and there are overall, as compared to the previous time, there is a much more better ecosystem and the enhanced support. uh, and I'm sure you would be realizing that probably something more also needs to be done. So, in your considered view, sir, based on your experiences, which are things which the country should do to ensure that the indigenization is fast tracked?
See, when we look at indigenization today, there are some fields where we are well off. Basically, any field involving software, which includes whether we're looking at drones, because that is largely software based, looking at artificial intelligence. Now, all of these we are doing well. And very shortly, we will be in a position not only to meet our own requirements, but also to export. Where are we falling short? We're falling short in critical technologies, which includes our, aircraft engines, naval vessel engines. You're looking at armaments. Now, these are where we are falling short. Now, how do we get out of this? The first is investment in R&D. Today, not even 1% of the defense budget is being used in R&D. Unless you enhance investment in R&D, we will not be able to achieve what we want to achieve. Indigenization, or basically development, flows from research. And for research, you have to fund it. Linked to the first, I come to the second. We have to accept risks. We have to accept failures. Not all projects succeed. Possibly 5, 7, 10% may succeed. But no project is a failure. It may fail, but there is something positive which flows out of that failure, which can be exploited later. The third aspect is transfer of technology. We're still procuring from outside, but when we procure, we're not looking at transfer of technology. What we've now created a base. What we want is technology. And if we can afford to procure technology through technology transfer, with companies setting up base in India, we will be providing a takeoff point to our industry. So these, I feel, are the three aspects that we need to go through. And I would not say sequentially, I would say almost simultaneously.
Thank you, sir. That is a very, very valid suggestions, and I'm sure all the stakeholders who will listen to you will take appropriate lessons. You will agree with me, sir, that all said and done, the defense production or the indigenization is a time-consuming process. So while we have to look at the indigenization, we have to also take care of our legacy equipment so that our up preparedness is not compromised at any stage, because we cannot really predict the war. It may happen today, it may not happen to next 100 years. So, sir, what will be the best strategy for keeping the legacy equipment operational as per your assessments or your recommendations?
See, the legacy equipment is going to remain. And equipment, if you look at an equipment life cycle, once inducted, it can remain in service for 30, 40 years. It depends on the form of equipment. Now, that is a sort of life period of an equipment. And if we have to maintain it, we need to indigenize the spare parts, the maintenance of it. We cannot bank on only a few government organizations doing it, which is one of the major causes for this shortfall coming in. It has to be given out into the open domain. We have to deal with the manufacturers, the OEMs, especially those from whom we've imported the equipment, and take sanction for local manufacture. We may have to pay them out for it. We may have them to transfer the base. After all, India is not the only country using the equipment. All Russian equipment is not with India alone. There are a number of countries in Southeast Asia, possibly even in Africa, using it. We could become the base for export. And that can only happen once we've taken that, established the industry here, and let the export go. Without involving the private sector, without getting the OEMs on board, it is going to be very difficult to continue maintaining the legacy equipment.
Absolutely, dot answer. In fact, the government has long realized this shortfall, or shifting its 100% responsibility only on the DRDO and DPSUs. In fact, it corporatized the ordnance factories, breaking down 41 ordnance factories in 7 DPSUs, and number of other actions. In fact, they are also now under pressure of delivery and survival.
Correct.
And to that extent, what recommendation you made regarding the involvement of private industry and also leveraging the technologies of our imported equipment, either from the original manufacturer or through other countries where that equipment is being used, is going to help us in a big way. Now, coming to the last query, sir, you have been a serious and professional gunner. You have also talked of the problem of tanks and BMPs in a conversation earlier. So, what in your views can help us to clear the backlog of overall of tanks, BMPs, and guns? Sir? Some random thoughts towards that, so that at least this issue is taken care of, so that whatever we have, at least that is operational and fit for battle, sir.
See, a few things. Firstly, today, as a government, when you're giving this task to defense PSU to handle, Avadi being a clear example, Avadi has to bank on Delhi making a deal with the Russian government or whichever country it was manufactured from, whether it was then Ukraine or then part of USSR and now Ukraine, or whichever country. The fact is, you have to make a a government to government deal for the regular flow of parts for it to continue being serviced. Now, invariably, that deal gets delayed. The backlog then of maintenance starts falling behind. If it comes to the private sector means money. Delay means loss. They're going to look for means to bypass networks. And today, when you're looking at it, that's what you need to do. But now that you're looking at it government to government, we need to begin manufacturing parts here. Largely, we can do it. We have the technical base, we have the expertise, and we are doing it. But we now got to make it efficient. Especially now with the way things are running, you're not going to be getting these parts for quite some time. We cannot let our equipment remain without servicing. The next option is again what we talk of the simple of manage, which is cannibalization. That is something we need to look at, that when we start getting a new equipment which is fairly running out, we need to cannibalize service parts. We need to start looking at that more seriously, because in case you're not going to be getting it, that's the other option you're going to have.
Thank you very much, sir, for a comprehensive coverage of such an important issue. which is concerning our national security, and in fact all the stakeholders in uniform, outside uniform, in government or outside government. Sir, thank you very much. Viewers, I, Major General Dr. Ashok Kumar, VSM retired, was your host for this dialogue with General Harsha Kakar. Please log in on mrodigestforums.com and share your thoughts. We shall be connecting for more such dialogues in future, and we will also invite you to be a dialogue speaker should you decide to speak on any subject related to the equipment in defense forces or outside, or anything related to the MRO aspects of any equipment in defense or outside. Jai Hind.